Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. Welcome to another episode of Soarin Around WDW. Today we just have a couple of little news things to go through that have happened since our last news update. First things first, a guest and his son got out and wandered around Tiana's at Magic Kingdom at the beginning of March, and this made the ride in a stop position for over 30 minutes. So that was crazy. I mean, people do crazy things at Disney these days. I feel like getting out on rides is becoming this new thing, and it's super dangerous and also makes everybody else in the ride have to wait for Disney and security to kind of deal with the issue. They ended up telling the people to just kind of stay where they were, and they came and got them out because the part that they got out on didn't have an area to exit. They weren't in an area to get off the ride, which I can't believe that somebody got their kid out. It's just so unsafe. So that happened. And then a new concept video was released by Disney showing what the Monsters Inc. door coaster will look like. If you haven't had a chance to view this, it is really cool. So go ahead and head over to Disney Parks Instagram to take a look at this. And Disney Imagineering gave a little behind the scenes look of where they're trying to make it just like in the movie, where the door starts off and then gets kind of picked up before it shoots off into the whole section, like at the end of the first Monsters Inc. movie, where they kind of go through that whole entire area tunnel of doors. So that will be super neat. So that is, looking better and better every time they announce more about this area. I get super excited. And so that was a really cool sneak peek or inside look into what they're trying to do for this section of the park. And then WDW News Today did show some aerial photos that looks like a ton of progress has been made on the Dino Land section and demolishment to make way for Tropical Americas. So again, getting closer and closer to seeing more about that. They did announce that for sure Indiana Jones will not be coming until obviously later on, and Dinosaur is open until the very end of 2025. So you have until New Year's Eve to get on the dinosaur ride, as well as the Boneyard Playground will remain open until then as well. They haven't said, is that the very last day or not specifically, but they will for sure be open. I think they're trying to see how much work they can get done in the meantime before they close down that area so that people are still kind of funneling into that section of the park. And then more ride details have been announced for Disney California Adventures Flight Lab by none other than Tony Stark himself, Robert Downey Jr. The quote by him is, "The curiosity, the passion, the inventiveness, the occasional flair for the dramatic, most of all, a drive to put something good out into the world to make life better, at a minimum more fun by a mile. It's the privilege of a lifetime to be invited to participate." And then on Stark Flight Lab, they announced that guests will be sitting in gyrokinetic ponds, I might not be saying that right, and move along a track before stopping in front of a giant robot arm, which will hoist riders into the air, making several high-speed maneuvers inspired by Iron Man and other Avengers. Riders will then transfer from a track to a robot arm and back again, something that has never been done by Disney or any other park. And Disney also released new footage to kind of accompany this announcement so you can see what I'm talking about. So again, check out Disney Imagineering's Instagram or look it up online to see some video footage. It is really cool. And then there was another really fun announcement with some more information for the nighttime parade that is coming to Magic Kingdom. And it is going to be called Disney Starlight Dream the Night Away. And it does have new concept art that came out and looks so magical. I'm really excited to get to see this eventually. It will be coming to the Magic Kingdom this summer, so summer 2025. So it is coming soon. Supposed to embody similarities to Paint the Night or like the Electrical Street Parade, the Main Street Electric Parade. So be on the lookout for more information about that. But that is all the Disney news that I have this week. So enjoy this week's episode where Dad and I get into our Parks of the Present Hollywood Studios first episode. All right, everybody, happy Wednesday. We are back today to start our Parks of the Present for Hollywood Studios. And this was a close poll on Instagram. It kind of went back and forth between Epcot and Hollywood of what would be next and ended at Hollywood at the last minute. So thanks to everybody who voted. It's always fun to see what y'all are looking forward to hearing about. But we did have quite a few votes for Hollywood, and Animal Kingdom even got a couple people's votes. So I wasn't surprised that it didn't win, but thank you to those who voted and participated because that's always fun. But today we are going to start off, and Dad is here back with me co hosting. We had a little bit of a surprise guest with Regan on the podcast to round out our top five and bottom five of Magic Kingdom. So we'd love to hear what you guys think. Did you agree? Did you disagree? Were you hurt by our choices? So let us know in the comments below so we can kind of gauge what you guys are interested in and what you thought about our opinions. But getting into Hollywood Studios, we're going to start our way on Hollywood Boulevard since that is right in the main entrance of the park. And this park became in May 1st, 1989 was the opening day. So it was quite a few years. It was the third park to come to Disney World after Epcot and obviously Magic Kingdom. And then Animal Kingdom was fourth. But what there is there today is significantly different than what was there years ago. And so if you missed our Parks of the Past episode, go back and listen to that for Hollywood Studios. We did have a couple of episodes on that and things that are no longer there. But jumping into what is there currently today and the attractions for Hollywood Boulevard, the one and only attraction in this area is Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which was previously the Great Movie Ride. Mickey and Minnie's actually opened with terrible timing. It opened March 4th, 2020. And then less than 2 weeks later, the park shut down for months because of COVID. So it wasn't a great timing for the opening. Obviously, they did not know that when they were planning the opening for this attraction. But it is a trackless dark ride that is at Disney World. It was there first and then came to Disneyland in Anaheim afterwards. It is actually the first Mickey Mouse themed ride through attraction at a Disney theme park, which when this ride first came out and they said that, I was like, no, how could that be? But it's true. There is no other ride attraction that features Mickey Mouse as the main star of the ride. It is an original story based on some of the world by the artist and storyteller Paul Ruddish, who created a television series on Disney Plus with a similar looking Mickey Mouse cartoon style. And the attraction was first announced back in 2017 at D23 when they unveiled 23 improvements to the Disney parks. And they announced that this would be coming to Hollywood Studios and that it would be replacing the Great Movie Ride. The premise of the ride is basically that all these guests are invited to the movie theater to watch the premiere of a brand new Mickey Mouse cartoon, which is called Perfect Picnic. The ride has this new technology, which is actually called 2.5D. It's not 3D, it's actually 3D without glasses. It really helps give depth to the 2D environments. And it includes more hidden Mickeys than any existing ride, which I did not know until I was doing research about this attraction. The entire ride lasts about 4.5 minutes, so much less than the original Great Movie Ride. And there are 4 train cars. Each have 2 rows of 3 to 5 people, depending on the size. So about 32 people can ride on each train. There is the original song, which gets stuck in everybody's head, called Nothing Can Stop Us Now. And that was written by the award-winning composer Christopher Willis and his wife Elise Willis. And it does rival It's a Small World After All as one of the songs that easily gets stuck in your head. You always seem to remember that song. And at Disneyland, the attraction opened in Mickey's Toontown on January 27th, 2023. So, Dad, tell me about what you think, and then we'll get into some Easter eggs in this attraction. But when you first went on this, how did you feel about the attraction? I know obviously losing Great Movie Ride was a huge loss, but what did you think about the attraction itself?
I've only gone on it once. It was a little over a year ago, last January, with Michaela and Morgan, Michaela, my granddaughter, and my wife Doreen, and we really liked it. I like the trackless idea. I think Ratatouille has a similar trackless system,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
Star Wars,
Yeah,
help me
Rise
out.
of the Resistance. Yeah.
Rise of the Resistance has the same system, so I
Hmm.
just think that's very well done. I liked it. It's old school Mickey Mouse. attraction. The song, you're right, gets stuck in your head, and you kind of sing that to yourself for the next 3 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in a nutshell, I think it's very well done. And even though I miss um, the other attraction, I really do enjoy. I did really enjoy this. This is something I'd probably go on every time that I would go to Hollywood Studios. I'd probably try to go on this every time. I thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, yeah, we really liked it too. I think the kids really enjoyed it because it's much more upbeat, it's faster paced. It obviously has Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy. I think the Daisy scene in the dance studio is my girl's favorite for sure. But I did see when they brought it to Disneyland, they obviously put it in Toontown. And right away, I thought, why didn't they do that at Disney World? This could have easily gone in Toontown at Magic Kingdom, back where there's almost next to nothing. Get rid of Barnstormer, for goodness sake, and put something like this in. I know it is a big ride, it takes up a lot of space, but really they could have gotten rid of almost Toontown in its entirety and still had a small meet and greet area and been able to put this attraction there. So I really feel like it belongs more in Toontown. I think they could have redone the Great Movie Ride and made it into different or updated but movies or attractions in that attraction. But I just, yeah, I like the ride. I don't know that it fits where it is, but I am curious. I'm going to go on the Disneyland version. I think it's pretty much identical or very close to it, so I'll get to see the differences here this summer. But yeah, I think it would fit a little bit better in the Toontown area. And our friends over at Idiot's Guide to Imagineering, they did a podcast where they totally redid the Great Movie Ride and had some great ideas of what you could do differently. And I just wish that they would have thought about that a little more before getting rid of it. But then some Easter eggs in this ride that you might not have noticed. The locomotive whistle that you hear is the same whistle that is in Mickey Mouse's debut cartoon, Steamboat Willie. And then also there's a scene where there's a newspaper headline that reads Oswald wins, and that refers to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which is the character Walt created right before Mickey Mouse. And then there's a parking garage labeled as Retlaw Parking, and this is Walter spelled backwards. So Retlaw is Walter spelled backwards, and one of the nods to Walt Disney throughout the ride. And they also have this little bird that was created exclusively for the attraction, and his name is Chubby. And he sings and dances in the park at the end. But originally, the bird was going to be called Chubby, and someone made a spelling error in one of the documents that they were sending around and put Chuuby instead of BBY. And they decided to keep it because they thought it was cute. And I actually like Chubby better than Chubby. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, some things I didn't notice. I also think the hidden Mickey fact is pretty cool. And now I'm going to be more on the lookout for that now that I know that fact. So yeah, overall, cool attraction, but I definitely think it could have gone somewhere else. And then moving into dining, there are a couple of restaurants in this area. Well, I guess one restaurant and then some quick servicey things. But the main restaurant is the Hollywood Brown Derby, which was an opening day restaurant. This came on May 1st, 1989, and it's a pretty pricey and upscale restaurant, as is the original Hollywood Brown Derby, which we'll talk about. But the entrees start at $28 to $52 ish. They have like salmon, filet mignon, Cobb salad, which they're known for. The original restaurant is known for. Halibut and shepherd's pie are just some examples of what they serve. They also have an extensive drink menu and bar, as well as appetizers and desserts. And the Hollywood Brown Derby at Disney's Hollywood Studios is actually a replica of the famous Hollywood restaurant. The original Brown Derby was a celebrity hangout and the birthplace of the Cobb salad and grapefruit cake. The original Brown Derby itself opened in 1926 on Wilshire Boulevard in California, and the restaurant was designed by Carl Jules Weil, an artist from Warner Brothers Studios. So I thought it was interesting that they brought it into a Disney park. But it was home to dozens of famous Hollywood rumors and stories, which included Clark Gable's proposal to Carol Lombard in booth number 5, and also Lucille Ball's dinner roll food fight, which is kind of cool. Disney World's Brown Derby is actually an officially licensed Brown Derby restaurant, and it is the fifth Brown Derby restaurant to be built. And the likeness to the original restaurant actually includes the covered entryway, the signage, the dining room, even the decor is pretty similar. So there's a lot of caricatures on the walls, and I guess the black and white images are copy, but the gold framed images are original. So that's pretty cool as well. And there also are the tiny Brown Derby lampshades. the Imagineers really put a lot of thought into making this similar to the original. But the lobby does have really cool images as well of the original restaurant. And on your way to the restroom, there is a sign on the big double doors that leads you to the theater as if you were going into the theater. So I've actually never been to this restaurant, I don't think, Dad. I don't know. We never went as kids because it's obviously very fancy, it's very expensive. But have you eaten here?
We actually all ate there when you were
You
kids.
did. Okay, I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, just once. Yeah, it was. I thought it was cool because I knew it was a licensed Brown Derby restaurant, which I thought was, you know, that was cool alone. But yes, we
Yeah.
went there probably, or dating our time there. This is years ago, probably 20 years ago, when we were there. But it was good, but we found it to be very pricey, and the portions weren't very big.
Yeah.
And not the best place to take kids. You guys are real young, probably 3 and 6 or whatever. Uh, yeah, I mean it's very well done, but as far as a family type restaurant, not a good choice. But for adults or whatever, I think it would be great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And now they do have this side restaurant that's attached called the Brown Derby Lounge, which opened October 30th, 2013. It does have the full menu available to order in the lounge as well. And then it is attached to the restaurant. So it doesn't have a very large capacity. It's basically a few tables out on this patio. They do all have umbrellas or awning like coverage. So if it's lightly raining, you'll stay dry. If it's really, really hot and sunny, you'll at least be in the shade. But because this is a lounge, there is a full bar outside where you can walk up and just order if you'd like. And their drink menu has a lot of specialty flights, cocktails, classics, as well as a small like scotch and bourbon menu. They do also have some non-alcoholic drinks that are like specialty drinks available. And they're different selections from what you will find at other just like table service restaurants. They're unique to this lounge. So each drink is refillable and does come with a glow cube, I read online. But just another little addition that you can walk up and do. You don't have to have a reservation. It does get pretty busy pretty quick from what I read, but that's attached right to that restaurant right outside. And then the Trolley Car Cafe is actually where the Starbucks is in Hollywood Studios. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, where is this? And the reason that I don't really notice it that much is it used to be a shop called LA Cinema Storage. And it's right as you're walking in the park on the right hand side before you turn right onto Sunset Boulevard. And now it's a Starbucks. So it does have a full specialty drink menu of your local Starbucks, as well as pastries and snacks that you're familiar with from Starbucks. They do have as well the famous carrot cake cookie, which is a very popular thing for people to get. That is unique to, I believe it's unique to Hollywood Studios. They have breakfast sandwiches and things like that. But I guess I've never like paid attention because again, I'm not a coffee drinker and I used to just think it was a shop and often I'm again blowing through that area to go get to Sunset Boulevard. But have you stopped here, Dad, with Doreen to the Starbucks or have you been back in it since it became Trolley Car Cafe from the shop?
I think we did. Yes, the last time we were there, this would have been last January because we did the Magic Kingdom, and then we hit Hollywood Studios, like the other half of the day. I know a weird thing to do, but we were had limited time. But
Yeah.
yes, we did stop there, and it was very nice. Yeah, they had Starbucks right in the corner there. I remember that.
Okay, cool. And then the only really characters that are listed in the app, interestingly enough, are Chip and Dale. But they also, I've seen a lot of characters just kind of hanging out in these grassy areas, not necessarily for meet and greets, but like Donald and Daisy are sometimes out there having a little picnic, or Mickey and Minnie will kind of pop out, but they're not always for meet and greets. Whereas Chip and Dale were listed in the app as of this week as being a meet and greet. When we were kids, I vividly remember being able to rope drop and actually walk right into the park and kind of wait either at Sunset Boulevard at like a chained off area. We have a picture, I'm gonna have to post it, of me on your shoulders, kind of standing right at the Sunset Boulevard area, waiting to go in with like a whole line of people. And then also, they used to have characters come out over there. So we have a really cool picture of Latoya and I just hanging out with Mickey and Minnie while we're waiting to rope drop. So they used to have a lot more people just kind of walking around to greet or like do the little morning routine. And now they make you wait at the gate. I'm pretty sure, unless this has changed, they do not bring you in to the park before the actual time to start, or at least it wasn't that way the last time I did early entry at Hollywood Studios. It's been, a year and a half since I've done that. But yeah, so just something to keep in mind as well when you're thinking about getting into the park. You do kind of start off with everyone else, so you need to know where you're going for sure. So moving over to Sunset Boulevard, wanted to get with the attractions. This is actually my favorite section of the park, which a lot of people would think is sad, but I really love the two attractions over here. And I love, well, three, because I love Beauty and the Beast show, all of it, fantastic, all of it. I could spend, a good portion of time just doing these over and over. But the first attraction that we're going to talk about is Rock and Roller Coaster, and this came to the park July 29th, 1999. It was at the time the only roller coaster that went upside down in all of Disney World. And it uses linear motor electromagnetic technology for acceleration, which propels riders from 0 to 57 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds. And I remember when this first came out, that was the big line, was like 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds. They used to advertise that just like that. And riders experience 5Gs and travel through three different inversions, which include a rollover and a corkscrew. So lots of different flips, not just traditional upside down. The attraction obviously features recorded music and appearances from the rock band Aerosmith. And in April 1998, Disney MGM Studios, at the time, as it was called, announced that they would be adding Rock and Roller Coaster to the attraction lineup. The ride was set to open for 1999 for the park's 10th anniversary, and they hired Vekoma to build the launched indoor roller coaster. Construction began 2 months prior to the announcement, which began in February 1998, and the track layout was actually completed by June 1998. They held its grand opening on July 29th with a special invitation-only party featuring Aerosmith as the guests of honor. They actually had people who won contests, and they were taken to the park in stretch limousines and received complimentary meals. After a special performance by painter Denny Dent, winners received the chance to ride the roller coaster with one of the Aerosmith band members, which is crazy. Like, what a cool contest. A picture from the special event is actually on display near the exit of the ride. And then on October 17th, 2015, the Hollywood Studios location hosted a special event to promote the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens. And so the queue for this ride actually featured Star Wars movie posters. The Aerosmith pre-show was disabled, and speakers from the actual film, or the speakers played music from the actual film on the ride. And the same Star Wars overlay also occurred April 14th, 2017. I don't remember either of these. I guess I wasn't really at the parks very much in 2015. And so I didn't remember even hearing about this, that they did the overlay. But we'll talk a little bit more about the overlay situation in a little bit. Then in 2016, the pre-show video was edited to digitally remove a crude hand gesture that was made by Steven Tyler called the Shocker, which as a kid, I never picked up on that. And then the pre-show of the attraction has been modified few different times over time. The most recent version features band member Joe Perry asking Chris, the Disney cast member in the pre-show, to grab his black Les Paul guitar, and then the cast member in the pre-show proceeds to pick up the guitar from the room that you can actually see, and it's a black guitar signed by Joe Perry from the set area. The pre-show film also includes a roadie saying, "Hey Joe, I'll get it for you," in the background as a backup in event that the cast member is not able to participate. I have not seen the cast member participate in this in a decade, like in a very long time. So I actually kind of forgot, but when I read this, I was like, oh yeah, I do remember them kind of coming out and doing that. Maybe when the ride was first open, but I haven't seen that in so long. And then Walt Disney Imagineering did work with Aerosmith to produce a special soundtrack for the roller coaster. Each coaster train features different Aerosmith songs. Some contain new lyrics, like they changed Love in an Elevator to Love in a Roller Coaster. And this is a piece that I did not know even now. And now I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. But the license plates that come on the front of the car and the back of the car actually give you a hint as to what will be played, or that's what is linked to what song. So there's a license plate that reads number 1QKLIMO, and that plays Nine Lives. You Go Babe plays Love in an Elevator and Walk This Way, which they change kind of a little around between the two melodies. Bye-Bye plays Young Lust, Fine, and Love in an Elevator, which is sung as Love as a Roller Coaster in the last line. Love in a Roller Coaster. And then Hate Traffic plays Back in the Saddle and Dude Looks Like a Lady. Too Fast for You plays Sweet Emotion. And then there is an unused song that was only used during testing, which is What Kind of Love Are You On, which was sung as What Kind of Ride Are You On in the last line. There also is a sixth limo in the fleet that has no license plate, but is always in refurbishment. And that just helps kind of the maintenance teams run a maintenance lap every once in a while when they need to. But yeah, I actually did not know this. Did you realize, Dad, that each car played a different mashup? I guess I just thought when you were in there, it played different stuff every time. Like I do remember hearing different songs, or I don't know. I like didn't realize this till I read about this. Was this something that you knew?
I knew there were different a different song in different sets that were played, but I think every time I rode this, I was hanging out for dear life, and I couldn't care less what they were playing. It was just like I
Yeah.
just wanted to get through. I just wanted to survive it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. It's fast, but it takes off 2.8 seconds, and it. I always found it a little bit painful the harnesses that go over and onto your shoulders when you're doing the inversion stuff. I always walked out of there with a little bit of a
Hurting.
little bit of pain. So I think I remember hearing the Aerosmith music. That was all my generation. But to know all this detail, I wouldn't have had a clue. And I think the first one, the 1Q limo, I think it's just one quick limo is what they're trying to say with
Oh,
that.
oh,
That plays
oh.
nine that plays nine lives. And I remember one of the license plates saying bye bye. I thought that was kind of funny. I remember reading
Yeah.
that when we were walking or waiting in the line there to load onto the ride. But yeah, I didn't know, the song selection. I remember hearing "Love in an Elevator" and "Walk This Way." The other songs maybe I'm not as familiar with, but yeah, it was pretty much just hang on for dear life and survive it. That's the way I kind of felt, especially the last few years I've been on it. So
Yeah, I feel like it's funny. I like vividly remember all I feel like every time, but it probably wasn't, hearing Dude Looks Like a Lady. So I just assumed that was always the song you got. And then same with the Love and a Roller Coaster. I always thought that was when you were like finishing, coming into the end. So I don't know why I just assumed it was like always a mashup of all these songs. But like you, similarly, especially when I was a kid, I was hanging on for dear life. I mean, this was my first upside down roller coaster, and it's an intense one. I think the first time you watch it take off, you're just like, whoa. And the fact that Steven Tyler is on there counting down three, two, one, like screaming it in your ears, and you just blast off. I mean, it is intense. And if you guys have been listeners for a little while, you heard our last challenge recap episode from December, and this ride got me that time. I mean, it's sad because it is one of my favorite rides. I love the pre-show. I love the whole thing. In fact, make it a super stretch. I don't know why. Still makes me laugh, but just little things that they said. I think the band is obviously a little quirky, as most bands are, and I just think it's really fun. They have really good upbeat music to play in there, but it did get me, and I got really sick afterwards, and I felt horrible. I actually ended up taking Dramamine and Zofran, and it took me a minute to get over it. So I don't know that it's one I'll be going on again for a while. It is coming to an end as they are changing it to Muppets, which I am super disappointed by. They A couple of other facts about this ride before we move into that discussion is, according to Weird Disney, the first band that was approached, this is another thing I didn't know, was the Rolling Stones, but they wanted $10 million to be the featured band on this ride, and so they were too expensive for Disney. After that, Disney asked Kiss, who asked for more money than they were prepared to pay, and U2 wasn't interested, so they kind of moved along. So then they went with Aerosmith. And so I thought that was super interesting because Rolling Stones obviously is huge. And Kiss also has really great rock and roll upbeat music. U2 I thought was a little bit of a different choice, but I didn't realize that Aerosmith was like the fourth in line. Did you know that?
this is probably the biggest surprise of all your research. No, I had no clue. And of course, growing up, I was a big Kiss fan, so I would have
Yeah.
loved this ride to be Kiss more than Aerosmith or even the Rolling Stones. I know uh, my wife would have preferred the Rolling Stones. She loves the Stones, but no, I had no clue. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. And then a lot of other bands came to mind when Maddie and I were talking about this. We're like, oh, like REO Speedwagon, Journey, obviously one of your favorites. I was like, they would have had really cool tracks to put in there. So, and Queen, like another one that we were just thinking of different ones, especially now with Guardians of the Galaxy. I think a lot of things when we hear about this changing to Muppets, we're like, man, they could have just done something totally different and added different songs from different artists and mixed it up each time. Like they do on Guardians, where you get a different song every time you ride, and like they were doing this whole time, unbeknownst to us, with this attraction. They could have just made it a bunch of different bands or music. And so I really wish that they would have done that instead of changing it to Muppets as it's going to be. I like Muppets. I don't think they fit on Rock and Roller Coaster. I know we have talked that a lot. But another installation of this ride is at Disneyland Paris, and it was the identical track and layout. It literally opened as Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith, so in French with Aerosmith. But now it actually closed in September 2019 and transitioned and reopened as Avengers Assemble Flight Force as a part of their Avengers campus. So that one has already moved on to different IP. I do think Aerosmith, as much as I love it and I would not mind it staying, I think it's a little tired. It could use something a little different, especially the interior of the ride. Like you said, you're hanging on for dear life, so you're barely looking, but there's not a lot going on there. So, yeah, I guess what are your thoughts about that, Dad?
I agree. Even though I grew up with Aerosmith, I think it's time that we move on. You know, going to the Muppets, I don't know if I want to listen to Miss Piggy sing "Love in an Elevator," but
Yeah.
uh, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm sure they'll come up with something that's fun and original, but it's quite a switch going from Aerosmith to the Muppets. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I've all again, I always liked the ride. I liked it more when I was younger, and I could deal with it probably a little better.
Hmm.
I think it's great, but the whole intro and all that, it's just so dated. I'm glad they're changing it to something different. I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah, I think something different would be better. But yeah, it'll be a minute before I hop on this one again, unless we're doing a challenge, because I really had a tough time. And then moving to my favorite attraction of all time, it still is, it has been for a very long time, is Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. And this opened July 22nd, 1994. And the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, or as most people call it, just the Tower of Terror, is an accelerated drop tower dark ride that is located at Disney's Hollywood Studios, as well as Tokyo Disney Sea, Walt Disney Studios Park, and formerly located at California Adventure before they switched over, which we'll talk about. But the attraction was inspired by Rod Serling's anthology TV series, The Twilight Zone, and does take place in fictional Hollywood Tower Hotel in Hollywood, California. All the versions of this attraction do place riders in this ordinary, quote unquote, hotel elevator and then present this fictional backstory where people mysteriously disappear from the elevator under the influence of supernatural activities many years previously. So the Tower of Terror buildings are among the tallest structures found at their Disney resorts. So the Florida version is 199 feet tall and it is the second tallest attraction at Walt Disney World. The first attraction is Expedition Everest, and that only beats it by half a foot because if it hits 200 feet tall, they have to put a red blinking light on the top. So they don't want to do that. So they've kept everything right underneath that limit. And after its re-theme, the Tower of Terror at Disneyland is 183 feet. It's still the tallest building on the property, as well as one of the tallest buildings in all of the city of Anaheim. And Disneyland Paris, it's the second tallest attraction. So they're very big, they're noticeable, they're park icons. Now it's basically the park icon for Hollywood Studios. It's used in most of the merch as the icon, which I don't mind because I love it. But in the late 80s, a second phase of development was being designed for Disneyland Paris, which was then called Euro Disney. And included in it was this free fall type ride in Frontierland that was actually going to be named Geyser Mountain. So it would have been part roller coaster, part free fall ride that shot guests up in a vertical shaft. But they scrapped the plan because Euro Disney was significantly failing and losing too much money. So it was picked up by Disney's Hollywood Studios, which was then obviously called MGM, as part of a massive expansion to their park. And several attractions had already been proposed, including Dick Tracy's Crime Stoppers, which would later be made into more of like an Indiana Jones attraction at Disneyland. And so we really needed a major e-ticket ride over in Florida at Hollywood Studios or MGM. So the idea of this drop shaft ride came up again and was chosen to come to Orlando. So there were actually several proposed ideas. This was another new to me, interesting little bit of fact, but the haunted attractions that they proposed in this drop ride included ride based on Stephen King novels, a Vincent Price ghost tour, a Mel Brooks narrated ride, a real hotel, an award show honoring classic movie monsters starring Godzilla hosted by Eddie Murphy and Elvira, and a whodunit murder mystery. But none of those obviously made it into be. But Walt Disney Imagineering eventually took inspiration from the Twilight Zone series, and so they mused that the attraction would be able to take guests into the fifth dimension that Serling always described when he began the episodes of the series. And the project was in development, and so they got the rights to use the actual Twilight Zone IP or intellectual property from CBS, who owned it at the time. And the Imagineering team settled on this 1930s era Hollywood hotel with the Twilight Zone theme. But the new ride system had to be built, so they really wanted to make a bigger capacity inside the ride and make the drop fast. They worked with a company called Otis Elevator Company, which was tasked to create the vertical ride system, while Eaton Kenway developed a ride vehicle that could drive itself horizontally. But Disney really wanted Rod Serling to be a part of this ride, but he had died almost 20 years earlier. So in order to capture him and include him in the attraction, they actually held auditions for his voice with his wife, his widow, Carol Serling, and she served as a consultant for the casting, which I thought was really, really cool. And after many auditions, Mark Silverman was chosen to provide the voice. So there is actual footage of Serling used in the pre-show that was taken from an episode called It's a Good Life. And then Silverman reprised the voice for additional lines for the Disney California attraction, as well as the first season finale 2019 revival of the actual Twilight Zone show. The child actor in the ride's pre-show is voiced by a woman named Kat Cressidia, who also voices Constance Hatchaway in the Haunted Mansion. So really cool kind of behind the scenes history about this attraction and its relation to the other spooky ride at the parks. The new ride was formally announced September 30th, 1991, and was later described as a haunting attraction with stomach-turning 130-foot drop for its finale. So the ride system actually uses the special technology developed by Walt Disney Imagineering. So it has the ability to move a vehicle in and out of the vertical motion shaft. And the elevator cabs are self-propelled automatic guided vehicles, which lock into separate vertical motion cabs. So the cabs can move in and out horizontally through the fifth dimension scene where the big eyeball is and it takes your picture and all these different things, and then into the drop shaft. So the Florida ride actually runs on a unique loop system. There's two identical ride systems built within the tower, but there's four shafts in the back section containing the dark ride portion. So four total shafts. And then after the corridor scene, the four shafts kind of merge into two fifth dimension scenes. And then the cab enters a single drop shaft. So after the sequence, the elevators unload in the building's basement and then return to one of the show shafts to reload the next guest. So it's really interesting kind of how things move in and out compared to the California version, which I don't want to give too much spoiler about what happens in that one. It is different than the Florida version. And then they actually featured a single drop until May 1996 when the ride was upgraded with a second drop. Then a third drop was added 3 years later in 1999. And in January 2003, the attraction's triple drop was replaced with a randomized multi-drop sequence within a computer within the ride. Did you know that this used to only have just one drop, Dad? I guess we weren't really there that much during that time.
I never knew that. I always thought it was three or four drops, but never just one drop.
Yeah, so it's interesting that it went from one to two to three to now what it is today, which is all kind of randomized. But yeah, it's cool. And now it is like you get a different thing every time. You always have one of the scenes where the doors open, you can see the whole park, which is always really awesome. One of my favorite parts. And then in order to achieve this weightless effect that the Imagineers wanted to achieve, they attached cables to the bottom of the elevator car to pull it down faster than what an actual free fall would provide, which is crazy. There's two huge motors at the top of the tower that are 12 feet tall, 35 feet long, and weigh 132,000 pounds. And so they can accelerate 10 short tons at 15 times the speed of a normal elevator, which is wild. They generate 275 times the torque of a Chevrolet Corvette's engine, reaching the top speed in 1.5 seconds. So it is impressive, and that is how you fly up and down so fast. The ride slogan is never the same fear twice, and that refers to it being randomly selected. It's different every time. The actual drop is 39 miles per hour, which blows my mind. Like, I guess I've never thought about how fast you're dropping. And initially, the attraction's vehicles seated 22 guests, which used to have a lap bar. But in 2002, they became seat belts, and they were replaced, by the seatbelt restraints. And that made your airtime as a kid a lot different because when you were sitting at a lap bar similar to Big Thunder, if your parent was sitting next to you with much taller legs, you got a lot more air than you do with the seatbelt. I'm sure it also was dangerous. So they switched it to the seatbelts, but I do remember it being lap bar restraint initially. And then following the attraction's success, the one of my favorite things about this ride is that Walt Disney Television produced the TV film Tower of Terror in 1997, starring Steven Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst, which were two big names. This was actually like Kirsten Dunst's early days, pre Bring It On and things like that, but based on the attraction itself and was not on the Twilight Zone TV show, which is the coolest part about it. It was Disney's first film based on one of the theme park attractions, so pre Pirates, pre Haunted Mansion, and was the only one made for television to date. They've all otherwise gone to the theaters: Jungle Cruise, Haunted, Pirates. And many of the scenes were filmed inside the actual attraction at Hollywood Studios when it was still named Disney MGM Studios. The rest of the scenes were in Disney's Burbank Studios in California. But I love that they filmed this at the ride. I love that it's all very much looks like the movie set. I'm super into movies, behind the scenes things and sets, so that makes me love this ride even more. You've seen this with me obviously when I was a kid, Dad, but have you watched this like anytime in the last like 15 years, this movie?
No, no, the last time I probably watched it was with you when you were you were young. I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was well done because, of course, I do love the Tower of Terror just about as much as you do. So
Yeah, it is a little freaky. I think it's rated PG and it's a little like, oh, maybe it should have been more than PG because there's some creepy witch stuff. It's nothing like inappropriate, but just creepy witch stuff. And like the elevator opens into hell at one point, and it's definitely intense. But it is cool that a lot of it was filmed at the ride, inside the ride, and outside of the ride in the park, which I loved. And then in something that I forgot that I did remember as I was reading it, but I had totally forgotten about was June 23rd, 2021. It was reported that Walt Disney Pictures was developing a new film based on the attraction starring Scarlett Johansson, who would also produce the project through her company. And it's called These Pictures, alongside Jonathan Leah, while Josh Cooley would write the script. And then it was initially canceled following Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit against Disney because they released Black Widow on the streaming service Disney Plus, but then now it's resumed. So that is still supposedly coming, which will be really cool. I'm excited to see a new updated version of that movie. I can't wait to see what they come up with for the story and stuff, but yeah, I'm excited about this one. And the California version of this ride closed January 2017 and was replaced by Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, which was incorporated into the Avengers campus in 2021. So it is really a bummer that Disneyland got rid of it. I mean, it makes more sense for their park. Their ride is a little different. I won't talk too much about it, but it's not as good to me as Tower of Terror. I loved the Guardians version, but I just love Tower of Terror so much that it was sad that it got away from that. And the Tokyo version actually has its own original storyline, not related to the Twilight Zone actual TV show, and takes place in this fictional hotel high tower. But what else do you remember about this ride, Dad? And do you still enjoy it, or is it one that you don't love as much anymore?
no, to put it in perspective, it's probably my number three out of the whole Magic, the whole Walt Disney World Resort.
Okay.
Haunted Mansion, Pirates, and then Tower. For sure. I just think the theming's amazing. The story's amazing. I watched Twilight Zone when I was a kid. It used to freak me out.
Yeah.
Great show. It's funny they were the initial part where they had Rod Serling, talking, who was the host of Twilight Zone for a number of years, and it was I believe he produced it and probably did some direction in those series. I think they're just little half hour black and white shows, but it was very popular. Talks about it being based on a movie called, let me just see here, It's a Good Life. And It's a Good Life, for some people my age would know, Billy Mooney from Lost in Space. He's Will Robinson back in the
Oh yeah.
60s.
Mm-hmm.
He was younger at that time. He was like 5 or 6 years old, but he was the star of that Rod Serling show back then called The Good Life, where real quick he basically could using his mind like turn people into jack in the boxes or throw them into the cornfield or set them on fire
Oh
if you got
gosh.
mad at them. It was a real bizarre, but it was one of the top rated shows, of that era. And I just thought that was neat because I remember seeing it, and then of course I was a big Lost in Space fan, and so Bill Movie was in that, of course, and he was kind of known for that. So anyway, just kind of a left turn from what we're talking about, but I thought that was interesting. But I love the
Linked,
ride.
yeah.
Yeah, and I know bringing you on the ride for the first time, I was with you, and that's when they had the lap bar, and I think you floated in space for a few seconds, and that probably freaked you out a little bit too. So
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely freaked me out. I think this was another one that I went on when I was pretty young, like maybe 6.
yeah, you're
And
sick.
I remember getting off of it and similarly to Splash Mountain, like maybe not talking for a little bit and then kind of got over it and was like, all right, I want to go again. But this does have a height requirement. Also, I forgot to mention that for Rock and Roller Coaster. Rock and Roller Coaster is 48 inches, Tower of Terror is 40 inches. But my daughter, who is about to be 6, last year when she was about to be 5, so she was almost 5, she rode this technically when she was 4 years old, and I thought this is either gonna really scar her or she's gonna love it, and she loved it. So I was proud of her for trying. We had kind of warned her and showed her some videos so that she knew what to expect, but she did really like it. She just kept saying, I floated in the air for a long time. I think like her little body just really got some airtime even with the seatbelt, which is funny. But yeah, I love this ride. It's definitely my favorite of all time, and I'm glad they've kept it around. They better not ever do anything with it. Apparently, Ariana Grande told them they can never get rid of it, so hopefully they won't because she's a big time celebrity now. But Beauty and the Beast live on stage is the last attraction. Talk about all my favorite things right in the same section. And this came to the park November 22nd, 1991. It is the longest running stage show at any Disney theme park, which is awesome. They updated the show in 2001 and added 2 different sequences. The Enchantress in the beginning, they made into a little longer into a song, and then they added the Belle reprise when she goes out into the field and is singing, I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. I want it more than I can tell. They added that into it. But the show was originally performed at the Theater of the Stars, which was in a different section of Hollywood Studios because they had this other like Muppet type show in this theater originally. But it moved then to the Backlot Theater in 1993, and then again to the Theater of the Stars, where it is now on Sunset Boulevard in 1994. The original version of the show opened the same day the film was released, which I thought was really interesting. So they didn't wait to see if the film was successful. They went ahead and made the stage show and released it the same day, which is crazy. And I mean, just speaks to how they knew this was going to be a huge hit. The show is approximately 25 minutes, and it was actually at Disneyland as well. I did not know this from 1992 only until 1995 in a Fantasyland theater that they used to have there, and then they scrapped it, which is interesting. I thought that was an interesting choice, probably because they just have a little bit less space. They were doing a lot with Fantasyland over there. But yeah, I mean, I love this show. I still want to see this every single time. Belle is my favorite princess. Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite movies of all time, if not my favorite. And I just really love the music. I really love Gaston as a villain. I love the character of the Beast and all Mrs. Potts and everything like that. So I really hope they don't ever get rid of it. I know Reagan feels differently. He's like, time for something new. But how do you feel about this, Dad? Do you still love it? Would you want something different there, or what do you think?
Yeah, I always liked it. We've seen this so many times; it's almost
Hmm.
disgusting.
Yeah, yeah.
You have every scene memorized, every word. And I always like the opening act. You probably remember that some opening acts back in the day. One was called Four for a Dollar. It was a men's a
Yes.
cappella group that came out and
Yes.
sang a few songs that kind of entertained the crowd before the show started. And that was cool. But yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't go back unless I was either with you and your girls, or I don't even know if Makana would go. She's 16 and driving a car now. I don't think she's gonna want to go to that right now, but she might surprise me. So yeah, but I would go back if I was with the right people to go see it. Yeah, I think it's very well done. It's amazing how long it's lasted, but it must be popular because Disney normally will keep those things around if it's attended well, and it clearly is. So that's great.
Yeah, it's a great show. I definitely highly recommend it. Even if your kids aren't into Beauty and the Beast, a lot of it is live singing, some of it is not. It's a track, but some of it is live singing. The dancing is incredible. The costumes are amazing. I just think they do such a good job with it. So I love it. And then the other attraction that's listed as an attraction, I don't really know why, but is Phantasmic, which is incredible. If you want to hear more about this, listen to our Disney After Dark episode because Regan and I talk about this in depth. This is our favorite, well, my favorite nighttime show. Came to find out his is Happily Ever After, but I love Phantasmic and probably could do an entire episode on this show alone. So we'll have to do that in the future. But it is listed as an attraction. I don't know that I really count it because it's more of their nighttime show thing, but it's in that section, and that is something you want to get to early. That's my biggest tip for that. The show might start at 8:30 or 9:30. You want to get there an hour before. Sometimes they have two shows a night. If your kids can swing it, go to the later show. It's usually not quite as crowded, but it can be. So just keep an eye out for what time, if it is showing once or twice the day that you're there. And then the dining experiences in this section of the park, there was more than I guess I initially realized. There is something called the Sunshine Day Bar, which opened December 15th, 2018. It used to be the Sunshine Day Cafe, and it's a walk-up bar that's only open seasonally. So the menu here is a little bit limited, but it does serve some specialty drinks like something called the Cherry Blossom, Southside Fizz, and Blackberry Moonshine Lemonade, along with some draft beers and a frozen daiquiri. Kind of ranges from $12 to $16. There's really not much else to say about this. I had to look at where this was because in my head I was like, I don't even know what that is. But it is just like a little walk-up station. There's not seats or anything outside of it. And then the Summer Ranch Market, which is the big area kind of right next to Rock and Roller Coaster, and it actually has 5 different things within it. So there is the Anaheim produce, which is fruit, churros, pretzels, frozen lemonades, frozen margarita, and beers. And it's like more of like a stand thing with the drinks. Then there's Rosie's All American Cafe that actually does have like true food. They have burgers, salads, hot dogs, chicken nuggets, buffalo and chili cheese fries. And then they have this phantasmic peanut butter cookie sandwich, which is a pretzel shortbread cookie sandwich with strawberry jam and peanut butter chocolate fudge and a phantasmic little chocolate piece on the top. They also have coffee, strawberry lemonade slushies, rum punch, and sangria. And then there's Catalina Eddie's, which is a meatball sub, pizza, Caesar salad, breadsticks with marinara, and they also have this toffee and coconut blondie, some sangria, Angry Orchard, stuff like that, And then Fairfax Fare, pulled pork sandwiches, fajitas, chili dogs. And then they have like this Korean barbecued pork belly bowl. So they have some different stuff there as well. And then Hollywood Scoops, which I guess is what I always thought of when I thought of this area. It's the ice cream place that's right at the front, and they have different sundaes and scoops. And sometimes we'd stop there right before or after Phantasmic, depending on park hours and stuff, and get our ice cream and go watch the show or whatever. But it's basically this big open market area with lots of like picnic table type seating and some umbrella seating. There's a lot of seating there. It used to be one of the designated smoking sections of the park, kind of back closer to the Hollywood Studios area, but now I don't believe you can smoke back there anymore. But what else do you remember about this section, Dad?
I remember getting burgers at Rosie's All American Cafe a couple of times. And I know we hit the pizza at the Catalina Eddie's a number of times over the years. Yeah, it's just good, fast food. There's always seems to be a place to sit down. There's lots of picnic tables. I think they all had I don't know if it's umbrellas, but some sort of awning covering all
Cover.
the Yeah. So you get out of the heat a little bit if that's, something you need to do. That part can get pretty hot. Yeah, I remember eating here many times, and the food was always at least decent.
Yeah, it's nice that they have the different sections with different things. So if someone wants pizza and somebody wants a burger or somebody wants Mexican, they have different like options, as well as like snack stuff, and then obviously the ice cream. So lots of different options, which is always nice when you're with a group of people that might not all like the same stuff. And then there also is over by Rock and Roller Coaster, the KRNR, the Rock Station. And this just has like mini corn dogs, mini churros. They actually do have root beer and Coke floats over there, which I didn't realize, and waffle cones with like soft serve ice cream. So that kind of ranges from like $5 to $15. And it's just a walk up counter thing. There's not really seats or anything. There's ledges that you can sit on and eat that stuff if you're waiting for someone that's going on Rock and Roller Coaster or something. But otherwise, there's not really like seats in that area. I don't know that I've ever stopped here, but I've noticed that it's there. Have you gotten a float from here, Dad, or did you know that they had floats there?
I knew they had floats there. My suggestion is don't get a root beer float and go on rock and roll roller coaster.
Yeah.
Wait till you're done with rock and roll roller coaster, please.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why there's a lot of trash cans near the exit, I guess. Yeah. And then Joffrey's Coffee Company is also over on this section of the park. They have a Joffrey stand. They have different sweets and pastries like donuts. This is actually back by the Tower of Terror, when you come out of the exit. And they have these big giant donuts, something called the Terror Cookie, which is a purple cookie, a sugar cookie with white chocolate chips, Oreo bits, and a dusting of cinnamon sugar on top, which sounds delicious. Obviously, inspiration from the Tower of Terror. I've never seen this. I did read it sells out pretty quick, so maybe something you have to get like earlier in the day. They do have coffees and teas, and they also actually have some alcohol out there, which is another thing I would not want to be doing before going on either Tower of Terror or Rock and Roller Coasters, drinking alcohol. That sounds like a horrible idea. But yeah, that's all kind of what's been out over there as far as dining in this section of the park. So no sit down dining. There's not like a sit down restaurant. And the quick service is really just the summer ranch market. Everything else is like counter, just pick it up and find a place to sit. But yeah, if you're looking for something to do kind of in between your last rides in Fantasmic or your Fantasmic show and your closing of the park, if you go to an earlier show, it's a good place to get some treats. They basically have anything you can think of in a normal park food fare for quick service and treats. So that's always a good one to stop at. Okay, so this week's old versus new, we're going to talk a little bit more metaphorically than actual like attraction, but I wanted to talk what your thoughts are between the current version of Hollywood Studios versus the old theming. So how they're kind of moving away from the behind the scenes movies, attractions, and more just into like a celebration of the Disney movies themselves and kind of what your thoughts are on that. Because I feel like people feel very strongly one way or another. And so do you have a strong opinion about, do you prefer it the way it is today? Do you prefer it the way it was? What do you think about that?
Well, typically, since I'm an old guy, I always like to go back to the past. But I really got to give credit to the Imagineers and Disney as a whole for what they've done with Hollywood studios in the past, what, 10 years?
Yeah.
With I know it's not called Star Wars Land. What is it
Oh,
called?
Galaxy's Edge. Yeah, Galaxy's
Galaxy's Edge.
Edge.
I always call it Star Wars. Reunited, I always call it Star Wars Land. Galaxy's Edge and the Toy Story area. I thought those were done really well. Even though, from what I gather in just a short time I was there in the Toy Story Land, they could use some shade somewhere in.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like,
Very hot
where
over
do you
there.
hide? Yeah, where do you get out of the sun? I mean, it gets really, really warm there. But no, I think what they've done is wonderful. I do miss some of the old attractions and the old way they did some of the things with the. I enjoyed the stunt show that we used to go to all the time with
Lights,
the
motor, action. Yeah.
lights, motors action. I like that. And behind the scenes with the Imagineering department or the artists, they used to go watch. This is way back, but I used to like that. Yeah, but short of that, if I had to pick and I had to be real honest with myself, I guess I would probably take it the way it is today versus the way it was, because I think they've done some really smart things. And, Galaxy's Edge is pretty incredible if you think about it. You walk back in there and it's like, wow, you're like right in the
Yeah.
movie. And Toy Story also, the way you're like a toy walking around looking up at all the Tinker toys and everything. I think it's very well done. So I really have to give the nod to the way it is today.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I struggle with this because I love movies, behind the scenes of movies. I think it's super fascinating, just the filming process and the way that they do the animation and things like you said, like they used to have it back in the animation courtyard before it's changed so much. And I really loved the backlot tour. I really loved Great Movie Ride. And like you said, the stunt show. We're going to talk next week about Indiana Jones and stuff like that. But I do think the immersive feeling of the new areas are just out of this world. And I remember going to Universal Studios and going to Harry Potter. And when you're walking towards Hogwarts, and it was just like, wow. But then I feel like Disney did that on steroids with Galaxy's Edge and as well as Avatar at Animal Kingdom and, just different things that they're doing. It just feels so much more like you're really in the movie. So it's different than the behind the scenes movie feel. I wish they could have kept some of the old and done the new, but I get that a lot of it was outdated and they had to make a lot of changes. So yeah, I think I have to agree with you that I like the new. I miss the old, but I do think the new is just really cool and I can't imagine Hollywood studios without it. It's incredible. So I agree. I think if I have to be honest with myself, I really do love the new stuff too. And then our quiz for this week. So it is a Hollywood Studios based question. Who is atop the blocks at Slinky Dog Dash? Is it Jesse and Buzz, Bo Peep and Rex, Jesse and Rex, or Rex and Trixie? Ooh, I want to say it's Jesse and Rex. I definitely know, well, Rex is in three of the answers, so I feel like it has to be Rex. I don't think it's Buzz because he has his own like statue thing kind of farther down. I'm gonna go with Jesse and Rex.
I will go with that. I don't know. I've only been there a handful of times. I would say that also. That would make sense to me.
Okay, let's see. Yes, that's correct. Yep, Jesse and Rex are the ones that sit
Well, we
atop the
got one
blocks.
right for a change. It's amazing.
Okay, yeah. I know for being Disney experts, I feel like we struggle with these quizzes sometimes. Okay, well, that is it for this week's episode. I did also want to just shout out we have started our March Madness fun with our attractions bracketology. And last week we chose our bottom four. So Dad chose two and I chose two from a list of attractions to kick out of our bracket for a total of 64 attractions to start the competition. So head over to our Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod to play along and see who the ultimate attraction winner is in the 2025 attraction showdown is what I'm calling it this year. So just a fun little thing we're doing on the side. So keep your eyes out on that. And thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.